Due to the present circumstances outside, tonight I'm going to be referring to my phone a lot. And my phone may start vibrating. It's been vibrating since that storm went down. So getting a lot of pictures of trees on stuff, so that's what it is. Candace is like, should we go to the basement? I said, no, I need to stay up here and watch all the trees and start counting money. So I think I'm just going to stay. People are like, oh yeah, man, there are trees down everywhere. And I'm like, and then, amidst all that, I'm like, I'm trying to focus, a big storm would go off while I'm home early trying to study and get it all together. And, oh my goodness, hold the phone. I don't have my book. It's got all my notes in it. Let's see here. Who wants to be a guinea pig? Okay. Tiffany, there is a book in the door of the Armada out there. Passenger side? Should be driver side. It's somewhere in there. It's a book, spiral notebook. It's got my notes. And I don't know that this will be anything worth listening to if I don't have that. Anyways, I'm just going to preface this talk we're going to have with just a couple thoughts. In light of what's been going on, the recent big deal is with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. It was pretty exciting. It was nothing no one thought we would ever see. And so it had a big to do with life and the value of life. And does the Constitution say that give you a right? Well, let's just say it this way. Does the Constitution have anything in it about a right to a dead baby? It's just kind of a weird thing. It's like, who would ever thought that was a constitutional right? And then, so in honor of life itself, we've had to deal with life coming and life passing here at this church. Within the past year or so, we've just lost a bunch of our family members. We've lost Miss Mona, Miss Brenda, Miss Bird, Miss Mona's son. We all knew him as a coach at Ridgeview. Me and my brothers did, and maybe some of you knew him, but we've just seen a lot of people passing and going. And thank you so much, Tiffany. Something that we've seen, thank you so much. Something that we've seen so much of is people's thoughts on life. And it kind of comes out in laws, it comes out in certain rules that are demanded of us at work, or just as parents, the way we would monitor our kids. We want to protect and preserve life. And all the things, the different traditional things we see in honor or in reverence of life. For instance, you go down the highway and an ambulance coming, what do? You pull over, get out of the way. If you didn't know that, that's rude. We do that in reverence of life. Because someone could be about to pass. We get out of the way. With a funeral, someone just passed. You see a long funeral line go down following a hearse. What should someone that is not part of that funeral do? Pull over. And why? In reverence and in honor of life. There's a certain value that's to be said of life and life in general. And to me, it just seems like... I had a teacher, it was about 2008 or 9, for the classes I did show up for at Blue Ridge. One was business law. He said the reason why we would put a law into place is because of a certain moral situation that we would be trying to keep. Like if it's, and we do this in honor of preserving life or helping someone have a good life by not stealing what they worked their tail off for, by having a speed limit to preserve the kids that are running up and down the road, not acting like a moron on the back roads and just flying. There is a speed limit in place to preserve life. And I got to find my spot here. I got a couple different sermons I've been working on. I'll start one or two and go on to the next one. How can we as Christians, I wonder, relay the importance of life in a culture that once seemed like it was doing everything it could to preserve life, but now we have a culture that seems to demean life? I'll just an example of abortion. I don't know if you guys have heard what's going on, but because of the Roe v. Wade, there's been fire bombings of pro-life clinics all over the U.S. because of the outrage. And I'm sitting there thinking, these clinics are designed to help women not only deal with their baby, but maybe help get this baby adopted by parents that don't have any children, or maybe help this young adult woman or even teenage girl get the proper prenatal vitamins, and maybe persuade her to even be a mother, which would be beneficial to everyone in her circle. And we are demeaning life, and we have such this idea of how invaluable life could be that we want to firebomb a pro-life clinic that would help these women preserve life, because it doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit our schedule. Why would someone get an abortion? It's just a weird thing. Why would you get an abortion in the first place? I've heard some of the rebuttals, well, what if a woman was raped and stuff like that? There's less than like a 0.4% chance of that even occurring. And normally, it's just a weird thing. It's because it doesn't fit their lifestyle. And they try to use these words that will say, well, I don't want that child to have a bad life, and I know that I'm not in the right spot right now. So we eliminate it. We just go and dismember it in the lab over there. So it's just another way we see life that's just kind of desensitized. We see it, I think due to the Roe v. Wade, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but in California, the governor over there decided to go ahead and put a bill out that's basically says, look, we got to get something in the works. Roe v. Wade was overturned. We got to go ahead and make sure that our abortions are in the clear. So we need to go ahead and get a bill going. And what it needs to say is something to this effect, that you can kill a baby up to 30 days out of the womb, and a police officer cannot investigate it, or he can go to jail. You see how they added that on there? Just an interesting thing. One of the biggest objections you get from Christians when you're talking to someone about God is well, if God is about preserving life and loving everyone and trying to bless everyone, then why would God wipe out the Amalekites? Then why would God wipe out and you see these different groups of people that God wiped out. It was the people that that did child sacrificing, which is very interesting to me. So your objection to me about God is that why would a loving God wipe out an entire nation, is because he decides to be God and decide who lives and who doesn't, and you yourself play God on the regular and support those who play God on the regular by taking children out. And these are the people that would take their baby, live baby, put it on an image of Molech, and it would be molten hot, like his arms pretty much molten lava. And they would put the baby on these images, on these statues, and watch the baby sizzle. And I think we know now that there was a guy that actually recorded. It was one of the I forget what their title is, but it was a secular. It was a guy outside of the Bible that had wrote in a diary that the drummers of these little sects of the Amalekites would play louder so that the babies would not hear the parents would not hear their babies crying while they were burning to death. And so it's just an interesting thing to see the laws that have kind of made a swap. No longer do they seem to be in the interest of preserving life, but they seem to be in the interest of someone's own self. Interesting enough, we have, it's just madness. So let me just go ahead and that's kind of my thing right now is just what does it take to show life? What does it take to show what God thinks about life? Let me just find in my notes where I am at here. I am just all over the place. John 10:10. Chris, if you want to go ahead and throw that up. And I just want to kind of start with this verse. John 10:10. Yeah, and I'm going to be bouncing around in a lot of different scriptures, and I'm going to pull some things. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy, but I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. Just kind of seems like the slogan of Jesus Christ. He would come that you would have life and life more abundantly. And there's so many people that are just going to whatever extreme they can in the world today to get the ultimate value, or what they think is the ultimate value out of life. We see it with, of course, abortion. We see it with people just going at, they're not holding back any expenses to do whatever, to get whatever they can for themselves, to fulfill their own self-desire. And Solomon, we see that a lot. One of the wisest men that ever walked, and one of the most wealthy, the Bible says there was never any like him. When he has achieved all this greatness and all this stuff, he looks back in Ecclesiastes, and you kind of see he's looking at this, all that he's acquired and all that he's achieved, and he's sitting there saying, like, this is vanity. This is empty. This is all of this. Oh, goodness. Throwback. This is all vanity. What are we, why did I even spend all this time and all this effort to do this? And to know that it's going to simply just be given into the hands of a fool. It was all just something that he thought was going to eventually fulfill, but it left just vanity there. If we are going to have life and life more abundantly, we're going to have to deal with three different parts of ourselves. And I think we all heard Brother Pat mention it many times behind the pulpit. We're comprised of three different beings. We have the body, we have the soul, and we have the spirit. The body is comprised of basically our eating and taking in and what we do to keep our physical this shell alive. And then we have our soul, which is our mind, will, and emotions, and then we have our spirit, which is our direct line of communication with God. And I just want to look at a couple different things. If we're going to, under these three different beings, we have to deal with these issues. We have to deal with the physical nature. Of course, we have to deal with the mental nature. We have to deal with our mental, social, emotional, and our spiritual. A human is all of these things. We're mentally, physically, spiritually, socially, emotionally, and of course, financial falls in under the physical aspect. But if we are going to have any kind of fulfillment in life, we have to deal with all these different parts that fall under the soul, the body, and our spirit. And I think Paul, when he reaches out, and I just want to read it over in 1 Thessalonians 5:23. Chris, you throw that up for me real quick. May God himself, the God of peace, sanctify you through and through. May your whole spirit, your soul, and your body be kept blameless at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. This is kind of in a benediction that Paul's just kind of throwing at the Thessalonians at the end of this book. He's saying, listen, if you keep your body, your soul, your spirit, if you keep all these things pure, the God of peace will sanctify you through. There's such a longing for people in the world, and I know you guys know them as well as I do. There's such a longing for more. And I think Ravi Zacharias, he was talking about this one time. He said, kids these days in this generation, this upcoming generation, have experienced more than I have in probably my whole lifetime because of what technology provides. On a whim, you can order anything you want. Oh man, Prime Video, on Prime, I can just order anything I want. I can get any kind of food. I can get any kind of beverage. I can get any kind of furniture. I can get any kind of. I can watch any kind of movie I want. I can watch any kind of thing that would bring sexual fulfillment. You know, it's something interesting is what I was reading earlier is that just something to think about. When a man watches porn, he has to continue. When you watch porn, it sets off these neurotransmitters in your brain. And that the only way you'll get any kind of fulfillment or satisfaction as a male is to revisit that over and over again. And eventually, it ain't hitting the spot like it once did. And you have to continue to revisit it. And then, while I was sitting there thinking about that, I was like, man, we would go and we would continue to dive into these things. And it would leave us, as Ravi Zacharias said, empty. We're seeing unprecedented stats on suicide, on depression, and all these different things. And it's because we as people in general, we don't understand that there is more than life to the physical. It reaches well into the spiritual, which God is saying, look, if you're going to have a life and a life more abundantly, then you have to deal with these things. You have to deal with the mental. You have to give God your mind. You have to give God your will. You have to give God your emotions. And you have to deal with the spiritual. You have to make me Lord of your life. You have to deal with the social. You have to deal with the emotional. You don't give these things to God. You leave room for someone else to step in and take over. Or something else to step in and take over. So many people put value, they make the absolute value in their lives different things. Some people make their ultimate value in their life. They think life is, well, if I could only have a great career, make a lot of money, make sure I have a good cushion for my kids, and maybe save up a good 401k so that I can retire and do well for myself. Or some people would they put the absolute value in their sexual orientation. We see it all over. We see it all over the world now. It's like, not only do we want you to be okay with our sexual orientation, but we want you to embrace our sexual orientation. We don't want you just to embrace it. We want you now to celebrate it. These people are reaching into making this their absolute value in what life is all about. And Paul just kind of says, look, you want peace? You want joy and joy unspeakable? You want fulfillment of life? Take care of your soul, take care of your body, take care of your spirit. Now, how do you do that? How do you make the absolute value in your life Jesus Christ? I'm just going to read a couple different things. It says, in his favor is life. Psalms 35. The labor of righteous tendeth to life. Proverbs 10:6. So it seems to me, the labor of righteousness, what seems like life and life fulfilled is doing something for God. The fruit of righteousness is life. Well, the fruit of righteousness is what you show as a Christian. How will someone know that you're a Christian? By your fruit. Well, your fruit is a product of you doing something for God. Proverbs 8:35, whoso findeth me findeth life. Well, in order to find someone, you have to seek someone. It seems if you wrap yourself up in forgive me, I was about to say the obligation of living for God. Not necessarily an obligation, but the blessing in living for God. You will find joy, and joy unspeakable. You will find life, and life more abundantly. There's a difference. It's not just a physical thing. Jesus, when he went back, let's go back to the 10 lepers. When Jesus showed up at the 10 lepers, and they were just kind of they were all in their leprosy, kind of put away from the city, and it was a law then that if you were a leper, you had to yell at someone who would approach you and say, stay back, I'm a leper, unclean, and you would have to then, if they wouldn't stop, you'd have to throw stones at them. And so Jesus approaches the 10 lepers. We don't see no stone throwing. You would think that they were just kind of bored. Maybe they were just like, thank God, someone else to look at here. We've been out here for 3 years. What in the world, what in the world are we going to do? Stone this man who wants to come and talk to us? I mean, thank the Lord. So Jesus shows up. He heals. It's 10, right? Everybody's looking at me funny. It's 10. So he heals the 10 lepers. And, from what we see, they're all Jewish lepers. And he says, and once he heals them, he says, now look, go and show yourself to the priest. And there's a whole thing, there's a whole deal that has to take place in the washing. And Brother Pat's talked about it several different times of how they can become clean after they show themselves to the priest. But they go and they go off. 9 of them go and show themselves to the priest. The other comes back and says, God, or come back to Jesus and said, and Jesus kind of looks at him, and he's looking at Jesus like a cow. Jesus looking at him like, where are the other 9 at? What are you doing? What'd you come back here for? It's like, I don't really have anywhere else to go. And he's like, because of your faith right here, because of this, because you have come back. The others were just healed, but Jesus then says, you have been made whole. There's a little more to life than just the physical healing. A matter of fact, when the Pharisees were asking for a sign, and Jesus had been showing signs all over the place. If you open your eyes, you've been healing people left and right. The lame are walking, the blind are seeing, the deaf can hear. And they were asking for a sign, and Jesus like, nope. An evil and wicked generation asked for a sign. And I think it's because that was a physical thing. They wanted to see a physical thing. And Jesus was like, I'm not here to address the physical. I'm here to bring life and life more abundantly, and that has everything to do with the spiritual. It has everything to do with your connection to God. And as far as I can tell, the Pharisees here and everyone and all the leaders have been sitting here showing you how your life is going to be doomed if you follow them. Just a physical, hypocritical way of life. That is, I think sometimes even in church, we see the stories and we see how God thought of the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the scribes. We see what he thought about them. I think if we're not careful sometimes, Christians and my fellow family really here tonight, people might would think that of us. We get too wrapped up in the physical of what's going on. We need to make sure that we understand that we're here in hopes to show someone what life is. What God said life and life, what it seems like Solomon was pointing out over and over and over again, whoso findeth me findeth life. Well, that requires seeking. You have to do something. The fruit of righteousness is life. Well, in order to have fruit, you have to show fruit. The labor of righteousness tendeth to life. The labor, in order to show or get or feel life, it's like you have to do something. James said this. He said, there was this interesting conversation that was being held between James in the book of Galatians and Paul. And we've heard Brother Pat point it out a couple times. And Paul was sitting there saying, it's by faith you're saved. James like, oh, no. And not just by faith, you got to do something. Faith without works is dead. You got to show some works with it. And what was really interesting is the second part of that verse. He says, and just like, where was it? What did I say? James says, the body apart from the spirit is dead. And I just want to point out, going back to Thessalonians, where Paul's saying, look, you got to deal with your body, you got to deal with your soul, you got to deal with your spirit. You got to deal with all three. Because none of them, they can't all be separate. Your body is what shows God. But what you feed more, that will take over your soul. If your soul is kind of the middle man there, you got a body, you got a spirit, and we've heard the expression before, they're fighting over your mind, your will, and emotions. One of which you're going to lean toward. You're going to lean towards your spirit man, which is your communion with God, where we see life and life more abundantly. You're going to lean towards the flesh. And whichever one you feed the most. If you feed your flesh the most, by getting it what it wants on a constant, regular basis, with no reservation, you're constantly just doing everything you can to feed the flesh, then you will become nothing but a mere beast. Simply put on the earth to eat, to live, and sleep, and then wake up and do it again the next day. Eat to live. And it's not even like you're living, you're merely existing. But if you feed your spirit man, and the labor of the righteous tendeth to life, the fruit of righteousness is life. Who findeth me, they findeth life. You take on life and life more abundantly by taking hold of Jesus more so than you would these things that would feed your flesh. It all sounds a lot better in your head when you're running through it. When you're preparing for a sermon, you're like, oh yeah, that's good. And then you get up here and you're like, I don't remember any of that. Some people, I was having a conversation with a guy that worked for me. He's one of the best guys that I've ever really had work for me. And so I was really just trying to minister to him / talk to him and deal with some issues that have been going on at work. And I was trying to inspire him to do a little better. And we went to Cracker Barrel. Great spot to have a covenant meal with someone, because it takes them forever to bring your food, but it's good when it gets there. So I was sitting there, I was having a conversation with him, and I was like, so brother, tell me what's going on with you, man. We got all these issues, so we're trying to work out. You seem to be getting pretty upset all the time. And my company holds the standard of that of a Christian one. So we're a Christian company, and we don't say a lot of the words you were spewing out the other day. We just don't do that. So tell me what's going on. And he was telling me a lot of what's going on in his life. I mean, he's got, I think it was like 4 kids by different babies' mamas and all these different things. I could not imagine. I just have 5 kids. But each one and now he has 5 kids now. 5 different babies' mamas. And looks like he's trying to make it work with this last one. Thank God. I don't know how. 5 different kids is enough, but 4 other women to put up with, and if they are half as mouthy as, I mean, I'm just kidding. Nobody, I didn't say that. No, but I was like, well, Josh, that's your problem right there. Like joking around with him, but he was going on about these different things going on in his life. He had, he was having car troubles. He was trying to get a house to rent and stuff like that. He didn't really have a place that he called home, and that's kind of a weird spot when you're staying somewhere until your house is built or I've been there. That was a horrible, but man, I was a senior in high school getting ready to make some of the biggest decisions of my life, and y'all drug me around from house to house while we were waiting on our house to be built. Yeah, that was annoying. But anyways, every day I had to go dig out the same holes at the house, and I couldn't even go home, or I couldn't go do anything else because I had to go dig them dumb holes out. Anyways, that's me venting. And so I'm sitting there, I'm talking to Josh, and his whole life around him is kind of falling apart, and it's spewing over. And now, mind you, I told you he was one of the best workers I had. It's spewing over into work now. So the one place where he made, it was like his absolute value of his life was wrapped up in work, because everything else, everywhere else was just falling apart. It was now coming into the workplace. When you have made something that is the trump value in your life, and it is not of something higher than yourself, it will fail. When you put trust in yourself, physically, mentally, socially, emotionally, financially, when I'm talking to, I think 3 or, we're going on 4 now. I think I've facilitated 4 weddings in the past year. Of the 4, 3 I've given counsel. I don't just want to put my stamp of approval on anybody getting married. I just kind of want to give them some of the stuff that I've learned in the past. Well, it's been almost 10 years now. So I want to give them counsel. When I'm counseling them, I'm saying, listen, if you don't reach outside of yourself to call on something bigger and more than yourself, aka God, and you're putting the burden on yourself to help you and your spouse make some of the hardest decisions you will ever face in your entire life. And your life, your marriage could crumble if you decide that you are going to take care of everything. if she is going to take care of everything. You together, there are some marriages that make it without God. To be honest with you, nowadays, probably not so much, but we're seeing the last few, I think, on earth. The divorce rate is so high, it's ridiculous. But if you decide as a couple and say, hey, I'm going to put, my decisions are going to be based off of God and God alone and what He says, you're taking the pressure off of yourself as a man or as a woman, and you're following what God would have you be as a married couple. And so, if you decide, if you say, hey, I'm going to give God my everything. Josh was putting all of his value in his workplace. And because everything else was falling apart, and he liked to talk himself up a lot at work. He liked to think he was the best, and he probably was the best, but he liked to let everybody know it. Eventually, even him being the best at work failed because everywhere else it was failing. Why? Because his trust was put in himself. His absolute value, if you hear him talk long enough, he'll sit there and say, at the end of the day, all I got is my name and my work ethic. That's what he would say. Like, well, bro, you're going to end up failing because you will let yourself down. You put too much value in your physical man, and you will have a life of continued letdowns because you've decided. You will feel like you have failed on so many parts. What happens when these kids of these different mamas come up to you and say, why weren't you around? Why didn't you want to raise me? And I couldn't imagine, he would be broken. I would be broken. If my absolute value hasn't been made to be Jesus Christ and His life-giving, is just His life-altering joy, His peace that would sanctify me through and through. But I have to be willing to deal with every single part of my life. I think sometimes we put aside the things that we don't want to deal with. The emotional, the anxiety, the depression, the bitterness, the jealousy, the things that we deal with in our heart. Men, I think we don't deal with the restraint. We don't hear many people talk about it behind the pulpit. Just real quick, I looked up something interesting today. I sent it to Candace. And I just found it really, really interesting. Just got to open up my bookmarks here. Well, I can't even, there's so many phone calls and text messages coming in. I need to put this thing on sleep or something. I can't even find it. I think I went through and deleted everything because I saw that I had too much, and I think I deleted what I saved. But what's really interesting is that the highest number of porn subscription comes from white males that are middle-aged, so somewhere between 30 and 45. And then I looked at something else, which was really interesting. It said the highest number of suicides in the year 2020 was by white males, middle-aged. It didn't give the number of how old they were. But I just found that, I was just like, man, that is a coincidence. Now, I'm not saying that because men had a porn problem, they killed themselves, but I am saying that they begin to dive in, they begin to feed their flesh over and over and over and over again, and it left them empty. It brought no life. And I think eventually when you find that you have discovered the ultimate high in your mind, you have discovered the ultimate high, whether it be sexually, physically, emotionally, socially, it will simply let you down. And then if you have put all that faith in yourself, if you have put all that trust in yourself, you're left completely empty. Ecclesiastes, I just want to read that. 2:17. Chris, if you want to throw that up for me. Actually, Ecclesiastes 6:12. Let's do 6:12, Chris. I got just, 2 minutes? And it's raining hard again. Let the wind blow. Let the trees fall. And it says, for who knows what is good for a person in life? During the few and the meaningless days, they pass through like a shadow. Who can tell them what will happen under the sun after they are gone? What's the next verse, Chris? It's obviously 13. Nope, that was not what I meant. Well, maybe I messed up my verses there. Go to Ecclesiastes 2:17 real quick, Chris. Sorry. So I hated life because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. And just as I was saying before, here's a guy that experienced the ultimate high on pretty much every single level. Got divine wisdom, had kings and queens from all the biggest nations, all the most successful nations around, coming to listen to what this guy had to share. And he's saying, and he probably built some of the most beautiful, well, he built the most beautiful temple we ever seen, because when they rebuilt it, and Nehemiah, the older men, it says they wept because it had not even compared to the first temple. And so he's sitting there saying, like, let me just tell you, I have experienced the best of the best of the best. It's all meaningless. It is a chasing after the wind. And I just want to end with something. I really don't think I did a very good job of explaining my thoughts, but in my head it sounded really good, just so y'all know. Something I was discussing with Dad, and I'm just going to end with this. And Stephen, if you want to play something or whatever, and I'll just end out with this. I was talking to Dad about what the image of God is. And man, I just opened up a can of worms, I know. But the image of God, to me, it seemed to be something of a spiritual nature, not a physical nature. And I don't really have time to get into it, but if you ever want to sit down and talk about it, I'd be more than happy to talk about it. I really don't have all the answers. I'm waiting for Brother Pat to talk about it. But it seems to me that God had a spiritual image that he impressed on Adam. It seemed like Adam kind of threw it aside. God wanted us to be a trichotomy. He wanted us to be both body, soul, spirit. But it seemed like Adam, eventually, it wasn't very long he was in the garden, he chose more body, more soul. And it's almost like the Spirit of God went dormant. And then God put his Spirit on people throughout the Old Testament to revive and quicken the idea of what God wanted his people to be. He wanted us to be a nation of kings and priests. He wanted us to be spirit. He wanted us to not be of the flesh. He wanted us to be a spirit that has a soul with a body. Not a body that has a soul, might have a spirit in there somewhere. He wanted us to be more spirit. And of this spirit, I think, is an image that he puts on us. An image that would overflow. An image that would overflow into everyone we meet. And if we understand that this image, wrapped up in this image, is life and life more abundantly, Jesus said, I've come to give it. I've come to give life and life more abundantly. And life more abundantly is wrapped up in my spirit. And that is the image that I would put on you. I've heard some hardcore Christians just kind of talk very rudely about people that are gay, and say, you know what, they should all just go to the moon, or they should all go to an island and we should nuke it. You know, you've heard these crazy Christians say stuff like that. And I think that Jesus would have it differently. He said, look, they are going for what they think is absolute life. They are going for what is the ultimate value of life in their mind. But if you go to them and show them me, if you go to them and show them me, they will know life and life more abundantly, because it is in my spirit. It is in my image that I would put on you. That's why we are to be more spirit. That is why we are to be more spirit, is so that we can be the image of God. And that is why I long for the Spirit of God in my life. And that's why I come here. If the doors are open and I try to be involved, it's because I'm exercising the works and all these, and reading my Bible and praying, is because I want my children to know life and life more abundantly. Some of these people that have put the ultimate value in life, they're acting out violently. They're acting out almost insane with the things that they're doing. Insane with the laws that they're trying to pass. It's just crazy. But they're alone and they're lost and they don't know what life is. So I would urge you, dive into the things that would build your spirit man. Let your spirit man take over, so that you can be the image of God everywhere you go. You know, we talked about the statistics of people committing suicide and how great they're getting and all these different things. And I know I got to end. We're 5 minutes over. And one last story. My friend, I've done one funeral my whole life so far. And it was a friend I knew when I was a little younger. Before I did his funeral, I saw him 2 or 3 weeks prior at Lowe's. He worked at Lowe's. And I said, hey man, what's going on? How are you doing? He said, I'm okay. And I was like, okay, well, I think I said something cheeky. Hey, smile, man, you know, it'll be all right, brother. A few weeks later, I'm getting a call from his dad saying he committed suicide. And I think, and I not carried the image of God maybe a little stronger. Maybe if I was wrapped more in the Spirit, I could have made a difference. I could have showed him what life is. And I was like, God, please, let me be more Spirit. Let me show these people what life is. You pass these people downtown staying, shouting abortion is health care and all this stuff. Let me show them what life is and how precious it is. Precious it is. I'm going to pray. God, we thank you so much, Lord. Man, you would take us and you would just take all the time in the world to show us how good you are, how amazing you are, and you are life, and your life more abundantly. And God, I thank you that you've shown me that in my life, and I pray that I can show my kids that. Selah, Eden, Noah, Kyla, and Abram, that they would see that you are life and life more abundantly. They would see your image when they see Daddy. In Jesus' name I pray.
I know Dustin just went over, but this is the image that was in my head probably starting about halfway